America, that music means David Drucker, senior reporter for The Dispatch, joins us. David, the enormous news out of Israel yesterday of the ceasefire and the hostage release wholly knocked the shutdown off of my news radar. I don't even know if I saw a story about it. So where do things stand, or should I say, where do people still sit when it comes to the shutdown?
Nothing has changed, and I think that's another reason why it's been knocked off the front page, so to speak. And not only is there bigger news in a really busy news environment, but people are used to these shutdowns at this point. They're not the shock to the system they were, and there's been no movement. And both sides seem comfortable in the positions that they've taken. And so, I always hate to make predictions because then you can look really foolish, and I don't like to look foolish. But this has the makings of a shutdown that could last for quite a while.
Now, the president did manage, I saw this on Saturday, and I have a son-in-law who's on active duty, so he was happy to hear he was getting paid, but he was mostly concerned about his E1s and his E2s. They're going to get paid. Can they pull that rabbit out of the hat twice for the troops in another 2 weeks?
Well, I don't know, but it also depends on what the president decides what the president concludes he's allowed to do. He does not care too much for congressional spending directives, right? He's been impounding funds. He's been laying off, civilian work, people covered by civil service laws. He's been doing a whole bunch of things, and I'm not casting a value judgment for the purposes of this discussion. Which is all I'm saying is that if he concludes he wants to pay for something, then I wouldn't be surprised if he just concludes that he can, and he does.
Okay, now, you're not old enough to remember Looney Tunes. Maybe you are. But my favorite was Wile E. Coyote chasing the Roadrunner.
Oh, I'm old enough. Oh, I'm very much old.
Okay. So when the Roadrunner would get up to speed, his legs would start to move, and they would go really fast, all of us fast, and they would take off.
Yeah.
That's Russ Vought. All right, his leg's been spinning up, so pretty soon he's going to take off. How many riffs do you think he has in mind? Because those are permanent if Russ Vought brings the axe down.
Well, ultimately he answers to the president. So, I guess the president's going to have to decide how much of an active participant he wants to become in this shutdown fight. As I've told you, Hugh, I'm like a broken record on this. The party that instigates the shutdown loses the shutdown. It doesn't matter which party it is. It's the way it is. And that's usually because the non-offending party says, look, man, I just want to reopen the government so we can negotiate. You're doing all of the things, and I'm doing nothing but sitting here waiting for you to get reasonable. If the president starts to become an active participant by firing people, not furloughing, but firing, it could theoretically change the political calculation of how people look at the shutdown, because now you have sort of two active participants. That's a theory of the case that may or may not be borne out. So I know that Russ Vought is anxious to fire as many government workers as he can, sort of by his own admission, by the president's admission. And I think the question is, what does the president want to allow him to do? They fired a bunch of CDC people the other day and then started hiring them back. Not all of them, but quite a few of them. So, I think a lot of this is yet to be determined.
All right, quick two political questions. John James is dead. His numbers have crashed in Virginia because he wanted Republicans to get 2 bullets in the head. Is he going to take Spanberger with him?
And you're referring to Jay Jones?
I mean Jay Jones,
not John James, who's running for governor in Michigan. I said, oh, we're talking about Michigan. No, Jay Jones, who's running for Attorney General in Virginia. He's dead man walking at this point, as far as we can tell. I don't tend to think that he's going to take Spanberger with him, because the issue in Virginia is affordability and what's happened, with government workers in Northern Virginia, and she speaks to that. However, she has looked rather weak and feckless in responding to this, so it's not a great exercise in leadership skills. And so I'm not going to rule out that this ends up causing her a problem, but I would lay it on her more than him. I don't think this has to cause her a problem at all. It may not end up causing her any problem in spite of my analysis. But if it does cause her a problem, my conclusion looking ahead is that it's going to be the way she sort of chose not to respond and how that looked versus what actually happened.
And then finally, I want to talk about Susan Collins, who is probably my favorite senator. I think I would move to Maine, but for the fact that they have an 8% income tax and a death tax up here. And she is the indestructible senator. They spent $48 million against her 6 years ago, and she won by 8.5 points. So Janet Mills, who will be 79 if she is sworn in as senator, if she somehow beats Susan Collins, will be a freshman senator at 79. And Susan Collins is the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, which may be the most powerful senator, maybe even more than the majority leader. I guess you could argue that. Do you think Susan Collins has to worry about this?
Well, I think Susan Collins has to worry about any competitive, well-funded race if she's running against a candidate that Mainers have voted for in the past and that they seem to like. So I think that Mills getting into this contest is a potential problem for her, but it doesn't mean she can't do what she's always done before. I think the question is, in a state where most of the voters lean Democratic and vote for Democrats, will they finally conclude that based on, how I feel about your party, will that change how I feel about you? It's never changed how they felt about her so far. But there's always a first time, right? It finally happened to Sherrod Brown in Ohio. That's one example. And so these things do happen. I will say as an aside that it's interesting to see Governor Mills get in on this unknown desire that Americans have for people that are about 80 years old to be very active in politics. So she's got that.
I don't get it. And Mainers are pretty smart, and they know what it means to have the chairman of the Appropriations Committee. And I'll say this without reservation or qualification. Susan Collins is the hardest working candidate I've ever met. I mean, if she sees you on the street, she'll pull over and help you with your groceries.
Right,
She is.
Yeah, and I was being sarcastic there a second ago, Hugh, with the age thing.
Yeah.
But Susan Collins is a tough campaigner. She hasn't survived on pure luck.
No, she is. SusanCollins.com. Go give her $10 because the Democrats are going to spend $50 million.